Hello, folks. Happy Thursday. It is Sharla Kornegay coming live to you with another Forever Friends Academy live episode. The place where we help people love to our fullest capacity and build relationships that last a lifetime. Because listen, you know, everything we do here is, at least in my opinion, centered around love, and our relationships are the heartbeat of our existence. And so I'm so grateful to create a space where I can focus in, hone in, and talk about it. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. As per usual, I'm always happy to be on here with you guys. I'm gonna introduce myself while I give some moments for people to know that I'm here and I'm live. I'm here and I'm live. So, my name is Sharla Kornegay. And this is my show, Forever Friends Academy. I am an author, a performing artist, the creator of Interask Coaching and Forever Friends Academy, where I do group membership coaching. And basically, on the show, we talk about all relationship topics. And I mainly focus on presenting fundamental principles that people can build and develop their relationships in so that, number one, they can basically love to their fullest capacity, right? So it's definitely the best relationships are built when both individuals are working on themselves. So usually, my aim is to serve the individual first, and then of course it will overflow and trickle into the relationships that they keep. So loving to your fullest capacity and building relationships that last a lifetime, because heartbreak isn't fun, and definitely it is priceless to be able to experience authentic love and be able to have people in your life and in your circle that you can feel like you can unequivocally trust wholeheartedly, feel safe with them and things like that. And so I like to bring up principles that help to facilitate that type of relationship. So if you have come in my little corner of the internet, I am so happy, and I'm happy to have you. And hopefully you hear something tonight that will be your cup of tea or smoothie or coffee, whatever, whatever you fancy. I personally fancy smoothies over tea or coffee, anything like that. But hopefully you will find something that you can apply to your relationships, something that makes you say, yeah, or like, have a light bulb moment. So if you want to, because I'm also a recording artist and singer-songwriter, so if you want to check out any of my music, definitely just Google Sharla K. That's Sharla with an S. And hopefully you'll find something there that you like. I absolutely love my songs. Definitely I played them for inspiration and love. Same reason why I do it here. So you'll find a lot of lovely, I love making anthems. So there are a lot of, I would say, upbeat type of anthem songs. I don't think I intended to do that, but I guess just the way that I am, my nature. That's what comes out. And definitely a lot of love songs, because I've been off the market for a while, y'all. My husband scooped me up real early. And we started our friendship for so long, and I'm so grateful for just being able to experience the miracle of it. So a lot of my love songs come from that place, So hopefully you find something that you like while I am cooking up, slowly, by the way. I got to give myself grace. Charlie, you need grace with myself when it comes to the music, because it's like, I just want it out already, But yeah, anyway. So that is enough about me personally. We are going to dive into tonight's conversation and topic. I am going to put out a question as well as, a quote for tonight. But this quote that I have for you guys tonight, I'm be very authentic and honest. I'm still working on it. So maybe y'all can help me tonight. Maybe I will give you what I have so far in the quote, and then we can fine tune it together. We'll see. But yeah, it's a work in progress quote, guys. The question is not, though. So actually it's two questions. I guess it's a personal question, and you can decide whether you want to play along with it or not. And then I'll give you the general question for tonight. We're going to be talking about tonight red flags, green flags, and relationship anchors and the difference, right, between all three of them. And so I thought it might be fun. We'll see how it goes. If for those of you who are on with me right now, if you can give me what you feel like is a red flag of yours, a red flag of yours, we all ideally, I don't know, maybe not all of us, maybe some of us don't really care. No, like we're not perfect, but we all want to be good people, right? So usually red flags is not a good term, right? It's usually a term where it's like, okay, you see that, walk the other way and run, or maybe not even walk, run the other way, right? Because that's not somebody who you necessarily want to be involved with. But we all know that we're works in progress. So whatever you're comfortable to share, if you feel, and I mean, maybe you're a person who feels like you have no red flags. I don't know. But if you feel like that you're still a work in progress and there are some areas that you do still need improvement in, what would you feel like is a red flag of yours? Number two is give me, a red flag, a green flag, and what you think a relationship anchor is. All right. So I don't know if it's a fun question, y'all. Y'all let me know if it's fun. But it is what I thought of tonight. Hey, it's Izzy. How are you, love? It's been a while. Thank you for popping in. So what I believe to be fun, I don't know. Maybe it's not fun. Maybe it's an interesting question. We're talking about red flags, green flags, and relationship anchors tonight. And we'll be talking about distinguishing the difference between them and why it's important in relationships. And so the question, the general interesting question, let me not say fun, I might be getting ahead of myself when I say fun, you guys will be the judge of that, is let me know if somebody came up to you and asked you what's a red flag of yours, right? Still, and again, we're all work in progress, so it could be, just look at it as an area that you still feel like you need improvement on. So give me a red flag of yours, a green flag of yours, and give me what you think a relationship anchor is. All right, so that's the question. Give me a red flag of yours, a green flag of yours. Hey, Emily, and what you think a relationship anchor is. All right, so that's that. And the quote, like I said, it's a work in progress, guys. So all I have so far, and maybe after we have this discussion tonight, you guys can help me refine it and have a better quote. But all I have so far is, of course, don't ignore red flags, but don't mistake green flags for relationship anchors. Don't ignore red flags, but don't mistake green flags for relationship anchors. So yeah, it's a work in progress. I was thinking about it and have that's it feeling, as a writer, even if I'm coming up with like quotes and stuff, I still look for that, like, that's it, whether it's lyrics to a song or I'm writing a book or whatever. But that's all I have for you guys so far. I was thinking about maybe I could say, don't ignore red flags, but don't fall in love with green flags. Because long-lasting relationships, it's the relationship anchors that really determine long-lasting relationships. So that's all I have for you so far with the quote. We'll figure out. Hopefully I get some inspiration after talking to you guys to have a more poetic or eloquent one. But that is what it's going to be tonight. So again, let me throw it out. The question of tonight. Give me a red flag of yours, a green flag, and what do you think a relationship anchor is? And the quote for tonight, work in progress, is don't ignore red flags, but do not mistake green flags for relationship anchors. All right. And while hopefully you guys are marinating on that, and let me put the link, because if it's Izzy or Emily or anybody else who is on with me tonight doesn't feel like typing, you guys can always join my live and talk to me screen to screen if you don't feel like typing and you're, camera comfortable, camera ready. Let me put that link in for anyone on with me, just in case you might want to do that. And so you can have that available. I would love it. I would love to talk to you screen to screen. And I'll also put it on the screen just in case somebody wants to scan the QR code for it. All right. And then we'll dive right on into this conversation. Okay. We will dive. Hopefully, you guys are marinating and thinking about it. So, as you see, QR code for tonight's show is on the screen. Scan it, and yeah, you can talk to me. Talk to me. Screen to screen, all right? If you don't feel like typing, that is a-okay. All right, and just as I said that, I got a response from, I believe it's Emily. Okay. Red flag. She put someone who is acting romantic with someone while they are already talking to someone. Talking stage counts. Someone who follows someone who posts provocative pics of themselves, especially while dating or talking. Okay, thank you, Emily. But I actually was asking, what would you say your personal red flag is? And I know you came in a little bit after, and I know we all want to, look at ourselves as good people and strive for perfection. But the truth is, we're all work in progress. So maybe from engagement with your family, maybe from engagement with your friends, what would, you say, like if you're on a date with someone and someone asks you that question, I think it's an interesting question to ask. Maybe it might, depending on the person, they might not, like, I guess it would say a lot if somebody wouldn't necessarily want to answer that or think it was out of order for the person to ask that. But I think it's a great question to get to know someone, to see how self-aware they are. So I'm really talking about what someone would say about you, or what you would say about yourself as a red flag, and what would you say is a green flag of yours, and then what do you think a relationship anchor is, right? Because we're talking about the difference tonight between red flags, green flags, and anchors in relationships. All right. Red flag, any form of abuse. Absolutely. I love what you guys are giving me, but you're giving me, definitely what you would identify in other people. But when you're thinking of yourself and you're reflecting on yourself, what would someone say? Like if you're on a, getting to know someone and they asked you, like, what would you consider a red flag about yourself if you had one red flag, and what would a green flag be? Yeah. It's Izzy said, red flag, people who don't respect your boundaries can be family, friends, and lovers, anyone. Yeah, I love what you guys are giving me. You're giving me really great ones. In general, as far as red flags, but I'm talking about self-reflection of yourself. And so I will go first. To kind of, I guess by example and demonstration, give you guys something. So a red flag for me that I'm so still trying to improve upon is lateness, being late. Like being late to certain things and certain places that I have to go to. And, I think of it as a red flag because you want to honor someone's time, right? It doesn't matter whether it's an appointment, doctor's appointment, or whether you're meeting a friend or anything like that. And to me, it's not a good reflection. I want to be on time in life, So that definitely would be still a red flag that I think that I'm definitely trying to improve upon. And I would say another one that I thought of, I'm very ambitious. I'm very like goal driven, and to the point that sometimes I don't know or like acknowledge or observe the capacity of the things that I'm taking on and doing probably all at once until I have like friends or family, come and tell me. Because I just remember this year, I set a goal of getting my project management certificates, and I started with Google project management specialization certificate, and then I was going to get the actual primary PMI project management. They're like the elite project management certificate, and then, so I gave myself a goal And when you look at Google to try to get it, they say, okay, if you do 6, you can get it by 6 months, as long as you do like 10 hours a week of it. And I just was like, yeah, no, I want to cut this down. Number one, because I don't want to pay all that money. I want to cut it down so that I can pay less, because I did it through Coursera, and I paid the monthly prescription subscription. So I was like, okay, if I had put this in half, then I don't have to pay, the full amount. I could pay half of it. And so I made a goal of 3 months, doing it in 3 months. And then right after that, if I stayed on track with that, then I would get my PMI certificate another 3 months, right? So 6 months in total. And, thankfully, thank God I did it, but I did it while still being a mother of 3. Of course, married wife, is still doing my coaching business, as well as going out and substituting in my district, working outside of the home, vocally coaching, all the things, right? And I was talking to a new client of mine, and I was telling her about it because she was also transitioning out of the career that she was in. And she was like, okay, I gave her all the information. She was doing it for a month, and she just called me like, Sharla, like, how I need to know the schedule you were doing, like, what were you doing? How did you do this within this time? And when I was talking to her, I didn't realize, like on the outside looking in, someone else is like, how are you doing this, handling everything that you have? Because she was trying to do it, and she didn't, she's not married yet, doesn't have any children and things like that. And so she really wanted to, like, question me and peer into what kind of systems I got going on, that I was able to do it within such shortened time. And the reason, it might sound like a green flag, but it's a red flag because sometimes, because I'm so ambitious, I can get very tunnel vision, like, and focused to do things. And don't get me wrong, I still handled my responsibility, but I feel like I can get that way. And a lot of the times, I'm really good with quality time. Like, if you have my attention, and I'm focused, and it's like structured and scheduled like this, right? I'm gonna give you my undivided attention. But I feel like where it becomes a red flag is sometimes when it's just like, okay, people just want to hang out, like my family members, or my husband just wants to chill with me. I feel like it's a less of those. It can. I've seen that it can make, and not so much man, thankfully, because, he knows me by now. But I definitely saw in past relationships that where I would get so ambitious and so tunnel driven that the people would be like, like, she's all good by herself, like, does she even need me? To the point that I think I was so kind of like what's the word? Self-fulfilled, or very content, that I would have past boyfriends would think that I was like cheating on them because they just weren't, they didn't understand, So that's why I think it's still a red flag, because I want to work on it to the point that I feel like, not just scheduled, time to give undivided attention, but time where I can just have more casual moments, right? Like sitting down and watching TV for no reason, and things like that. So that's why I think it's a red flag, and I want to improve upon it a little more in that way. So those would be my two red flags. I'm going to stop talking about me because I think I gave y'all I'm gonna go to the comments I got. Maybe me out of myself gave them some inspiration. Hey, Mr. DeJesus, how are you? We are talking about red flags, green flags, and relationship anchors. And the question that I put out is that, just imagine, I mean, I don't know if you're single or married, but let's just say someone asked you close to you, what would you consider is a red flag, still a red flag of yours, an area that you want to improve? What do you think would be a green flag of yours? And what do you think a relationship anchor is? Because that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So let me stop talking about myself and figure out what has been said in these chats. Thank you guys for taking out the time to type. Okay, so Izzy, I believe this is Izzy, right? Am I reading this right? Yeah. Izzy said, I'm sorry, I just got to move it on over to make sure I can see exactly what she said. Okay. So, okay, those were the old ones. Emily said, not Izzy. Emily said, so my red flag with me is that I'm ridiculously indecisive. Okay, I can definitely. I feel like I used to be really indecisive. So I can totally understand you there, is Emily. Sorry, I was about to say Izzy. I can understand that. I've gotten better now. And I used to kind of justify it because I'm kind of like as much, and this might seem so contradictory, right? Because of what I just said to you guys, and I'm very tunnel vision. And when it comes to ambitious things like creativity and projects, I am all the way. But when it comes to like what restaurant you want to go to, what movie you want to go to, what do you want to eat, I'm very like laissez-faire, and I think it produced indecisiveness in me because it wasn't like, oh well, I want sushi, or and I have friends that are very much like that, like this is what I want, I know what I want and when I want it, and I'm just like, I don't know, so I totally understand. I've definitely been there. Izzy said, reflecting on myself, my red flag is looking for the good in people. Ooh. Wow, that you could tell me, you shocked me, right? Really? I'm so interested to know why you feel like that's a red flag, looking for the good in people. Are you saying it in the way that like you've seen them and they've shown you their fruit and you know they're bad? Is it more so looking for the good, or falling in love with the idea of who you think, or an expectation of who you think the people, because some people would say that's a great, like, at least I would, a green flag, looking for the good in people, in humanity. I know I look for the good in people and humanity. I don't blind myself though. So if that's what you mean, let me know. She said, and sticking with my goals. Okay. Understood. Sticking with my goals. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would say, right? Like, making a goal. And I feel like, and me, I think I think I could put too many things on my plate sometimes. So like I'll beat myself up because currently I want to get new music to you guys. And because the top of the year, I focused a lot on getting my project management certificate, I feel like I put, the music to like the back seat. And so I'm like, oh, I'm hard on myself, So I feel like what you just wrote now, when it comes to like, okay, I need to follow through with the goal that I said I want to finish a third album by this year. So I can totally understand that one, Izzy. And Emily also said, and my green flag is that I'm empathetic, or that I look out for others. That's a really good green flag. It is. I think it's hard for a lot of people to be empathetic, like truly empathetic, to be able to go into another person's shoes. So I think that's a very great characteristic. It's Izzy said her green flag is doing well with minimizing my debt. Now that's a good green flag. Okay. I all the way praise that. That's really good. That's a really good green flag. Very, very nice. Yeah. Because listen, in America, we definitely need that. Okay. It's a lot of, no, for real. I think I was just like browsing past an article that was talking about the credit card debt in America is like insane. So that's a really good characteristic. Hey, protagonist, how are you? Thank you for popping in. We are talking about red flags, green flags, and relationship anchors tonight. And I put out the question, if you feel so free, if you want to answer. The question is, what would you say is a red flag of yours? What is a green flag? And what do you think a relationship anchor is? And Emily says, oh yeah, and another red flag is that I sometimes only see the good in relationships, platonic or romantic. Oh, that sounds very similar to what Izzy said. Okay. Only seeing the good. Okay. I think the way that you guys are posing it, okay, it's as he explained a little bit more. She said, meaning they showed me their bad and I still looked for the good in them. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's what, because the way both you and Emily are kind of describing it is like, where you're turning a blind eye. in the way, and it kind of makes you, because you, in the way that I kind of look at it is kind of, and we had a extensive show about it, of saying how when that occurs in relationships, oftentimes we'll have certain expectations or ideas of how people are, and we'll erect those things like monuments, on our hearts, on our souls, to where they're inscribed, right? And like, that's not really who the person is, and when the idea or the expectation of who you either desire that person to be, or wish them to be, now, takes the place of the truth of you, like you guys saying, being able to observe and see how they are, the nature of their character and what they're demonstrating to you. Then that's how we kind of fall into disillusionment in relationships, whether it be romantic, friendship, platonic friendship, or familial relationships, or even business, right? Relationships that can occur. So I totally get it. Yeah. I understand why you guys put it as a red flag, because for sure, I think a lot of people do that. And it's not bad to like look for the good. But I think I always love the scripture in the Bible, because it just makes it plain when it says you will know them by their fruits. And I love the fact that in the Bible they use fruits, because it's like anybody who has planted a gardener, is a gardener or has planted a garden, that if I'm planting a watermelon seed or a pear, or apple tree, no matter how much I wish it to be another fruit, it's not going to be, right. It's every, it also states in the Bible, every seed reproduces after its own kind. So it, sometimes we do that in relationships, right? And I think that's one of the things that kind of is highlighted to me when you guys are expressing what you're expressing, and that can most definitely be a red flag, because no matter what is being displayed to you, there is a expectation or idea that you have, or result that you want to experience in the relationship that has precedence over the truth of what's being displayed in the current now. So, yeah, totally get that, and I don't think you guys are alone at all in that. Emily says, I'm also kind of like that, but my thought process is that who's going to keep me company if I cut them off, and what if he's the one? Well, yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Company is different, and I think a lot of people will kind of deal with the things that you guys are talking about for the sake of company. But I think with every relationship that we have, whether we're intentional about them or not, there people who come into our life, there is, right, either a season or a purpose to why they come into our life. So whether we do our due diligence to be intentional about it, rather than just saying, okay, I will just accept your company, it's going to expose it anyway, right? And so that's where in the process of our minds and our hearts, we have to, well, not have to, but we get the opportunities presented to whether we're going to say that we will, either learn the relationship skills, be able to put on the cutting board of just saying, okay, I'm just going to have this person for a company, or whether I'm going to really authentically observe what's going on in this, what's being demonstrating in this relationship, and then don't lie to myself about it, so that if the person is quote unquote my person, then I know that they are, because I was okay with really going through the process truthfully, rather than, you know what I mean, a facade or a representative. And I remember I had a conversation with a close friend of mine, something similar to that. And I remember she was upset because she was dealing, you know, everybody, well, not everybody, but lots of people, definitely during 2020, COVID and things like that, were going on to, you know, dating websites and things like that. And she had met someone, and, you know, she didn't really know, like they went out a couple of times, but she didn't really know how she felt about him. And I remember it was either was her birthday or something, was something special going on. And she, you know, wanted to, I guess, got connected with him again, and wanted to see if they were going to go out. And I guess somewhere in the interim, you know, he kind of said he was going to take her out and they were going to do something, but then they ended up not doing it. She was really like pissed off, and she felt, and I remember her expressing to me that she felt like he was giving her like the runaround and things like that. And but I had remembered in our conversations, she said that she wasn't really, she knew in the process of them talking that she really just wasn't that into him. Like he didn't seem like he was going to be really for her. And when she was telling me, because she was so pissed off at him, you know, and he's not consistent, and, you know, why don't he just say what it is? And I said, well, to be honest, to be fair, he's doing what you're doing in the relationship, right? You know, or the development of the friendship, because you know that you don't really, you know, really think that he is quote unquote your person. This was you wanting to do something because of whatever special event had come up, and you knew that he could be company for you. You know, so basically you're using him for the company, and that's not right either. You know, it's kind of like what they say, the guys, I don't know if you guys see the video of guys saying that, you know, they're tired of women, you know, going on date with women, and the women are using them just for, you know, a date at the restaurant or meals and things like that. And I have some friends that'll say, I'm not even taking them to the restaurant no more. I'm going to take them for coffee, or I'm going to take them, you know, and mind you, a lot of them that I speak to have a good reasoning for it, because they actually want to get to know. They use it now as a filtering system to figure out the women who are just trying to get a free meal, or are just looking to see where they're going to take them, you know, to eat, if it's going to be a place of a high status, to try to kind of like assess what their bank account looks like. So a lot of the men are using it like, well, actually, this would be a good place for us to get to know each other. But a lot of the women, you know, on social media, of course, are saying, well, no, don't, you know, so I've even heard some of them say, don't go on coffee dates, don't go to places like that, because, you know, he should put more of an investment into getting to know you and things like that. So in that same way, it's like that, you know, it's usury, basically, you know, so you don't want that. You don't want that. And if, no matter what, we'd have to confront, I think underneath that would be a fear of, right, like it being alone, you know, or like who's going to keep me company in that sense, you know. The process, you don't want to come into the relationship with a representative, you know, you yourself, and you definitely don't want the other person to come in with a representative. You know, you want the relationship to build and bring out the most authentic you possible. So sometimes that is like, that's a very real statement that you said, Emily, you know, and a lot of people, especially a lot of women, go through that, you know, where it's like, okay, well, I want the company, so I will either settle for this type of treatment or settle for this type of relationship, even though I know that it's not necessarily going anywhere, or this person is not really for me. I just want to, sorry guys, something's in my eye and I'm like, I know this is not aesthetically pleasing, but something's like really in my eye. You know, it's not right to want someone just to, you know, have them for company and not it be a real relationship where you're building, you know, towards something real. So, you know, you want, if you want the authentic experience of true love and true relationship that builds together in life, then we got to be authentic and truthful about the processes that we're entering and are in, you know. So Yeah, but you'll find more so the person that is the one for you being your authentic self and not you know using someone's time just for company's sake, and I think when I think of people who have told me that similar things to that in the past, what I'll tell them is that I know it's not the same as a romantic relationship. However, if it's company, that you're feeling like you don't have, then, I will tell them go to their other relationships, like their friendships, their familial relationships, and spend the quality time, the authentic quality time there, so that at least, right, they're getting the fulfillment of that in other relationship dynamics and areas in their life, and then that'll afford them to not, just kind of place, people there who don't belong there just for the sake of feeling, the having their company. Also remember another friend of mine who same kind of thing that came out. She was courting someone basically, and they were developing a friendship, and the guy actually had came out and said, I don't really know if this relationship is for me. If it was out of 100%, I think it'd be 30% so far of how this relationship is going that I would want to be with her. And honestly, a lot of times when I take the time, the energy to come out and see her, it's just because I don't have anything else to do. So it was like he earnestly and honestly told her she was a filler, for him. And to build, of what the intention is to build towards marriage, that's definitely not going to be it, right? Like this person is a placeholder. And I would say to, a lot of my clients that you always learn from your relationship. You can at least put yourself in a position to always grow and learn from the relationships that we keep. However, the more that you kind of keep yourself in a space with someone who for certain you're just either using them for company, then the more time you know that you're in that, then you can lose the opportunity to meet the person who's genuinely for you, because that time is now being misappropriated and invested in the wrong area. I always say the quote that my husband says, faith is failure. So the more time you invest in a relationship like that, then it's like, you know, missing out on opportunities to actually form authentic relationships with people who might be the one that is truly for you, a person who is supposed to grow with you through a lifetime. But I appreciate you guys. I all of the answers that you guys gave me or ones that I have definitely either dealt with myself or definitely relatable, have heard other people say they're red flags, that whether it was they saw in other people or whether it was within themselves. So I appreciate you guys sharing that, first of all, being open enough to share it. So let's go into heavily with just describing, right, what what those things are: red flags, green flags, and relationship anchors, what those things are. And then we can kind of tie why it's important, right? For the relationships that we keep. So Emily and it's Izzy both in their answers let us know heavily what red flags are, but I'll just say it anyway, just in case. Red flags are basically, right, the warning signs, the warning signs that we might be in something, or that we are in something, potential problems in relationships, and a lot of times those red flags could be like, how they say in communication, we have our like micro expressions and things like that. And so, of course, in the beginning of a relationship, sometimes those things are just things that are not, very outright, they're like just little might be behaviorisms or patterns that we see that the person is displaying. I'll give one example that I'll tell a lot of my clients when they're, potentially vetting someone who they feel could be a lifetime partner for them is look at how that person is with, like, when if you're out somewhere to eat, or if you're going for a coffee meet up or things like that, how that person is with just like the waiting staff. Is that person rude? Are they, you know what I mean, like, do they have no kind of care for the people who are serving them? That's one thing, right? Because how you behave, in general, and how you deal with people definitely will give you a good sign of how that person's character is. I know there has been times that I've seen and different people that I've talked to where you'll have some men who were that the women were dealing with that didn't either have good relationships with their mother, but they were good to the girlfriend, quote unquote, or they didn't have good relationships with their children, but they were good, in the beginning to the woman at first. And you think that it's not going to translate, to the relationship that you have with that person. But in both the scenarios that I saw it in, it did. It didn't at first. And they were thinking, well, that person's just like that with that person, but they're great with me, but you know, over a long period of time, the monster starts to come out, and you see that this person, if they are struggling in this most intimate sense of with the relationship with either the person who brought them into the world or the people that they brought into the world, to not think that it would translate in some way, right, to your relationship. It wouldn't be something that you would definitely just be like, oh, no, that's not a problem, and that you would want to ignore, right? Emily said, she's adding, she says, or you can see how someone drives, because if they drive aggressively, they can be aggressive to you. Yeah, that's a good, that can be somewhat of an indicator, especially if it's all the time, right? If there's all the time, if they see a grandma, they over here yelling at road rage about grandma taking too long to cross the road, for sure, yeah, that's something that you can look at, some other things that you could probably look out for. And just again, for anyone joining new, we're talking about red flags, green flags, and relationship anchors, and learning the difference between them. And the quote that I put out for tonight is that don't ignore red flags, but don't mistake green flags for relationship anchors, right? And that's what we're getting into. So we've been talking about red flags, what they are. Basically, red flags are warning signs of potential problems, right, in the relationship, development of the friendship. These are behaviors, right, traits or dynamics that suggest the relationship might become unhealthy, unbalanced, or even unsafe. God forbid. But yeah, that can definitely, right, be an indicator of that. All right. So some common, we'll just do a couple. There are many, but definitely lack of communication. Right. We all know you definitely have to have a good environment of communication for a relationship to be healthy. Right. So that could mean someone's emotionally unavailable to you, controlling behavior, right? Telling you who to talk to, what to wear, etc., like that. Disrespect for boundaries, right? That you've created for yourself. Any kind of constant criticism or belittling, dishonesty, secrecy. Gaslighting, right? Making you question your perception or your feelings. Jealousy disguised as affection. Let me say that one again. Okay, because I've definitely dealt with a lot of people who have dealt with this within themselves as well as with others, and it's tricky because what I've seen in the beginning when people display this jealousy that's disguised as affection, it's almost feels like a love bomb at first for the person that they're with, because they're like, oh, look at how much they love me and they desire me, and but it becomes toxic really fast. Because there's no, if jealousy's there, it's definitely rooted in an insecurity. So that insecurity is going to, right? It's not an anchor for a relationship, so that it's not a solid foundation. So it's going to go left really really quickly. But I see how people can get drawn in by it, and it can beguile a lot of people when they're in it, because it just feels, the jealousy is disguised as affection, so it feels like, oh, this person just really wants me and they just really desire me, and I've heard people just say, oh, it's jealousy, that they're cute, it's cute. It's only cute for a little while, before it becomes like, okay, this is too much. Emily C also said, or how they react if they're angry. So if they throw things, most definitely, bang things a lot, or just being hurtful, they can be abusive. Yeah, definitely. How someone handles conflict definitely is something, right? You want to be aware of, right? For sure. Absolutely. Again, there's so many inconsistent behavior, right? That leads to confusion, insecurity. I always go back to the scriptures where it says God is not the author of confusion. You know when you're starting to kind of lose your peace and there's a lot of confusion around the relationship, that this is not, it's not producing a healthy environment that we both can grow in. And last but definitely not least, lack of accountability. Okay, or blaming, the partner for everything. And now let me tell you, us ladies, I'm talking to the ladies now, women, this accountability piece I've seen a lot, where it's hard. The pill, the accountability pill, the truthful pill, the admitting when you're wrong. Sometimes it's harder for us to admit, especially if you, I've seen this happen where, if you feel like, if the woman feels like there's a breakdown in the relationship, and outwardly she's doing a lot of things that she's maintaining, whether it's the household or outwardly maintaining the, or trying to, quote unquote, I guess in her idea would be what she can do to fix the relationship, is hard when, and I've seen it's challenging in the process when, let's say I have a couple that's comes together, and let's say the man in the relationship, whatever they did is outrightly wrong. And when it comes to the point where we are now examining the relationship as a whole, and you realize that the two people make the relationship healthy, and the two people also can add to the breaking down of it, even if one person's actions, thoughts, internal conflict and warfare within themselves is not so easily identified. And because it's not oftentimes for the women, when it comes to the point when we're doing the coaching, and the self-awareness is now put on them, I've seen where it becomes really difficult and challenging to own up to whatever part they played in the breaking down of the relationship. And sometimes that happens because they've might have been hurt by their partner for for so long, or so much, and have in their hearts and in their minds constantly blamed them for it, that now when it comes to self-reflection or having self-awareness, it's like, what? you know what did I do? And it's like, well, no, it takes two people. If it takes two people for a relationship to break down, maybe it might take a microscope, microscopic type of look and observation to see what part you played in it. But when we see it, it is important to have full accountability for it. So if somebody has lack of accountability, right? Blaming you or someone else for everything. I think this is really good. I know when I was developing my friendship with Ben, I definitely listened out in his speech to see, because we all have things, we all have our own experiences in life and challenges that we've had to face and things like that. And so if you can listen to someone, if they're, victimhood type of mentality, even if it's not just blaming you, but it's just like blaming everyone else and not coming to a point or a space to where it's like, okay, I, even if it was something that was done to me without my permission, there's no way I can escape the accountability that I, want to heal from the things that I've gone through. And I'm not going to be able to do that by just casting blame only for the people who, had a hand to play in it. So even in that type of way, right? So those are some examples, right? So warning of relationships that are, unhealthy and toxic. So green flags, right? Signs of healthy and a supportive relationship. Signs of a healthy and supportive relationship, right? So these are positive indicators that the relationship is likely to be respectful, caring, and growth orientated, right? So we talked about some common red flags. Let's talk about some common green flags. Open, honest communication, mutual respect, right? For boundaries, accountability. They both own up, right, to their actions and apologies sincerely. Support, right, for the goals, collective goals, as well as individual goals. Emotional regulation, that's a really important one, right? They can handle, as Emily highlighted, conflict without escalation or blaming, you. Shared values, compatible, right? Life goals, kindness and empathy, what Emily was talking about earlier on, right? Consistency in words and actions. I cannot let me say that about 3 times. Consistency in words and actions is so true. Consistency in words and actions. This is something I just tell myself. There's a quote that I love, and I forget who it's by right now, but the quote states, how you do anything is how you do everything. How you do anything and is how you do everything. It's a quote that has changed my life, but then it's also something that I feel like is a weight, and I love that in tandem with consistency, observing the consistency in words and actions, because that quote helps me look at how I do everything, and am I bringing the same level of care, of detail, of meticulousness, of honor, in what I'm doing to everything, no matter how macro or micro it is, right? And so when you're dealing with someone who you can see, I know for Ben, dealing with him, developed my friendship with him from a young age all the way into his adulthood. He's always been a friend, a husband, where the consistency of his words and his actions match, every single time I've seen it, And I always say he brought it up a notch to where now it's not even just his consistency of his words and actions match, but what I absolutely love about him is that it's beyond that. It's like, okay, he's constantly just looking, does the consistency of his words and actions match the truthful and fundamental principles of God's, right, words. So yeah, definitely important. So those are some, right? Comfortable with being vulnerable, willingness to grow, right? And work through challenges together. That's important. Emily also wrote, let me take some time because she wrote, okay, she said, okay, and I'm not sure if you've seen the Man of the Year trend, but people would post instances in which their exes were being atrocious. Oh, wow. No, I have not seen that. She said, wow. What a play on words, Man of the Year, but they're doing horrible things. That's terrible. Like there was one where this guy said that he could do whatever he wanted to his girl. Oh, wow. That is terrible. I'm hoping. No, I've never seen that before. Now you're going to make me kind of like look it up. But I'm hoping, these were old videos that they just like had in their in their phone. I'm just hoping that whoever these women were, that they're no longer in those relationships, and they were, safely left. if it, to the point where whether it's verbal or physical abuse, hopefully. But no, I've never seen that, but definitely something worth looking up. All right. And last but not leastly, anchors, right? And that's the quote is, don't mistake green flags for anchors. And the reason why so far, my working in progress quote, I put it that way, is because I think, you know, questions like, where, and you guys let me know if you've ever heard anybody ask you this question, but sometimes I'll get questions from people of saying, we were two good people. How come it didn't work out in the relationship? Like two good people, good hearted, good natured, etc. People should just be able to work out in a relationship, because if we're both good hearted and good in nature and have good qualities and have a whole bunch of green flags to show, why didn't it work out in the relationship? And in answering them, I'll say, that's what made me think of putting that, the way I articulated that quote. Like, I think that can happen when people mistake green flags for anchors in relationships. So green flags, as we said, are things or signs that you can see, of a person's personality or character that would show that they have, right, the ability to have a supportive relationship, with you. But anchors are different, right? They're like what we talk about all the time on here, on, my show, which are basically the foundational. They are the foundational traits or shared principles, right, that keep the relationship anchored, grounded, stable, unshaken by the test of time and change and the challenges of life, especially during tough times, right? Especially during tough times. And I think the anchor comes into play because you can have two good natured people. And I remember, I don't know how many, shows ago where we talked about, the difference between compatibility and harmony in relationship, and how you can have compatibility, meaning like the people are, two good natured people, but somehow it doesn't mean that they can come in alignment with each other and harmonize to be able to build the relationship together. And that's because even though they are both, displaying, or have certain good qualities, they still weren't able to come together in harmony in some of those foundational, fundamental, truths in the relationship that anchor the relationship to be able to weather the storms of life. So let me read, because I have a statement from Emily, and I think a new, okay, no, just Emily. Let me read what she wrote. She said, and the worst, okay, I think she's still talking about the man of the year trends on TikTok that was exposing ill treatment by men to their, ex-partners. And she said, and the worst one I saw was a guy telling someone how, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I want to say that. Geez, how apeable, because I know, or grapeable. I'll say that. I've heard people, instead of saying the full term, they'll say grape or ape, so hopefully you guys get the idea. But she basically said that the guy was telling someone how grapeable, that's so disgusting, they are. And they were either recording videos and screenshots that were posted. That is horrendous. Oh my gosh. Like, I don't, this thing with social media is like, in a one way it's good because it makes you aware of things that you wouldn't be aware of. But I'm just like, in a situation like that, I'm hoping that, that young woman got away and hopefully was able to get justice in other ways in regards to that situation, because that's definitely someone you do not want to be, with, for sure. That's a huge red flag. Run, run, Forrest, run. Do not pass go. Just keep, looking the other way. So, all right. So rounding it up. And finishing our conversation tonight is examples, right, of what anchors are in relationship. And of course, trust, right? Trust, 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 trust. I always say trust is established by God here. That's who established it. And what I mean, let me say it again, because I know sometimes when I say it, it's like, what? Because I know people say trust is built over time, which is true, right? Like the trust is the best way I can give the example is that no matter how much we can observe a person's personality, we know that people do present, right? Present representatives. Over time, right? Those representatives will be exposed if we just allow them to. If we are earnest and intentional about observing. I had my private Forever Friends Academy group session last month, and one of my favorite quotes that we talked about is that nature can't be controlled. It can only be observed, right? Nature can not be controlled. It can only be observed. And of course, we're talking about, nature, the environment outside. But I used it in tandem with developing relationships because when you enter a relationship, you can't control the other person, right? You can only set your own boundaries. You can have your standards and your principles that you live by, and you can come into the relationship vulnerable and authentic and truthful and things like that. But you cannot control the other person, but you can observe. But the reason why I say God establishes trust is because sometimes we can put the wrong lens there, right? Like you can observe something, but just like in science, right? There are certain things that you need, you know, a microscope to observe, where you won't be able to really see it, right? Like the tiny bacteria and things like that, that it's necessary. And so the reason why I say God establishes trust, because sometimes people can observe from kind of like what it's Izzy and Emily brought up tonight about, what they deemed as a red flag of just looking for the good in person, right? And so sometimes we can put on our lens of and kind of calculate the things that we think we should be looking for in the relationship. And sometimes if that has nothing to do with the kind of like fundamental foundational truths that exist throughout all seasons, through all generations and things like that, then it can skew what we believe is true, right? And what and also influence us to invest in the wrong people. And so God established trust, meaning that my trust that I have in Ben, whether it was the beginning of our forever friendship and the trust, deep sense of trust that I have in him as my husband, is that I'm saying that whatever he's saying, I am going to filter it through what I know, right, solidly is the principles of God and the principles of truth. And so when I do that, then I can kind of have the right lens on, and I also say God establishes trust because we're in a system of trust, so even though we think that we can gauge, which is our right, you can create your own boundary and observe and choose to interact and engage with certain people based on their trustworthiness, that you feel. There's nothing wrong with that. The issue, though, is that you always, or where that can go left, is that sometimes we'll do that as like a defense mechanism rather than kind of like the process of just kind of filtering and seeing if, this person is someone that God is saying, okay, you should definitely invest this much time in this person because this is the type of person that this, person is. So let me see, should try to make it a little bit more simpler. I have stated in the past to some of my clients that when I communicate to Ben or when I'm listening to him, basically, I always, go to God, right? Definitely go and pray or pray for him in my gratitude of having him in my life every single day. And when I do that, I'm intentionally saying that I know you were created by God. God made you. And even though we've been together for all these years, I know there are deeper depths to who you are. And so I don't sum it up and say that I just know all of who he is, right? And so basically, if there was a picture of how it would look when we're communicating or when this trust is being established, I'm basically taking, if Ben's right here, I'm right here, and then God's smack dab in the middle, you know? And that is kind of like the filtration, system that I use. So hopefully I was trying to make it simple, but I don't think I don't think I did a good job. But basically, trust is an anchor, right? And yes, as I said, Ben definitely God establishing the trust in the relationship, and then me being able to observe him over time, right? Being consistent in his actions and his words, right? That, yeah, it fortified it even more. But I didn't just say, I'm going to trust this individual based on da 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 da. I you honed into the principle that I know about life, that his nature, I can't control it, but I can observe it. And if I don't lie to myself and blind myself because I want him to be something more than he is to me, then I will let the truth expose what he is. So that's what I mean by when God establishes the trust, because sometimes we can jump the gun and we can, say full throttle, okay, I'm trusting this person, but the lens that we're using is not an anchor. It's not based on a foundational principle. It could be that you saw that this person had a green flag here, and maybe even though you saw the green flag there that they had, when you combine the two together, it just didn't work. Like for example, for me, in my relationship with Ben, one of the red flags that I told you guys that I'm working on is sometimes I can be very tunnel vision, and how when I was with other, developing other friendships, how they took it the wrong way, like they took it as, okay, she doesn't need me, and it's made them start questioning whether I was being a faithful person to them. Ben, he kind of functions in that similar way. Like we both trust the processes of life a lot. And so because we do that, it worked really well for us in that way. So, because we're both very trusting, and we're allowing God to establish this trust, then it was very easy, for us to operate together in that way. So definitely trust is an anchor. And I'm sorry, I missed a lot of folks coming in here. I so apologize. Coach Yaba, I don't know if you're still here. Truth and Rhyme, We Fear Jesus, my beautiful cousin, Mrs. Ivory Jackson. I don't know if y'all still in here because I was busy yapping. I'm sorry. Let me take a moment to say hi. We are talking about the difference between red flags, green flags, and relationship anchors. Question I put out for anyone who feels like they want to join the conversation is, what is a red flag of yours? What would you consider a green flag? And what do you think relationship anchors are? You guys came in on me explaining the difference between the red flags, green flags, and we were on relationship anchors when you came in. So I apologize. I don't know if y'all still here, but I wanted to at least stop by and say hi. All right. So a relationship anchor is trust in the relationship. Okay. Of course, shared purpose, right? Shared purpose and aligned vision of goals, family, lifestyle, values, right? So I'm hoping, even though I only gave you two so far, that you're understanding one of the big difference between having just like identifying a green flag versus having an anchor is how these green flags that both of you have, when they combine together, how they work together well, right? So the anchor is, okay, when we combine these parts, what is the greater vision or the greater whole that they produce together, right? So that's why I said, don't mistake the green flag for an anchor, because a green flag could be like, oh, wow, I see that's a good person. They have a good quality. But just because you have two good people doesn't mean that those two good people are going to be able to work well, align with each other, and harmonize to build and work together for a lifetime. right? It just doesn't mean, it just doesn't equate that. There's a lot of people, two good people that come together and it just doesn't work out, right? So safety, of course. We always talk about it and you always hear it. Emotionally safe spaces, to be vulnerable. Someone who's going to cover you emotionally, physically, psychologically, right? Mutual respect, of course, and definitely commitment, right? A reliable person who's investing wholeheartedly 1,000% into the relationship, especially in difficult times. That's when you want to kind of look and assess, like, okay, I just, before I was on this show, we were talking about is there a healthy way to lose yourself in a relationship? And I was telling the participants that there most definitely is, because you hear all the conversations about, don't lose yourself in a relationship. And of course, they mean don't become codependent, don't, erase your identity. And I was telling them one of the ways that you can identify the difference, because if you're building and want a relationship, especially if you want a relationship going towards marriage, where to become one is the goal. And even if it's not just marriage, but it's in, let's say it's a working relationship, collaborative relationship where you're working on a creative endeavor or a project or things like that. It's you want to be a one entity, right? So that's going to take a losing of the sense of self that you had before you had to go into the next position, right? And so an example that I gave them to be able to highlight the difference is that losing yourself in an unhealthy way would mean becoming codependent, right? And losing, not honing your identity, right? That you're coming with, erasing of your identity, right? Whereas healthy losing yourself in relationship is a healthy process of losing yourself and rediscovering yourself, right? Like, it's a principle of growth. Growth is losing yourself and rediscovering yourself. We go through stages in life, from childhood into teenagehood into adulthood. If you do get married, if you have children, fatherhood, motherhood, right? Transitioning, health issues, old age, all of those are different, just like natural occurrences and transitions in life that many people won't be able to negate, right? And so when we're going through those transitions, there might be a old self that you identified with, right? That it almost feels like there's a losing, right? Because when you were single, there was a different system. There was a different way or approach that you had in handling maybe yourself and your life and stewarding your life in that stage, right? Whereas when now, okay, if you're entering into becoming a husband or a wife, you're now expanding. You are now becoming more responsible for someone other than yourself. So the merger of those two people is going to create a more in-depth understanding of who you are. And that oftentimes does feel like a losing of the old self. Any mother in here, let me know when you became a mother, definitely for the first time, it can feel like, oh my gosh, where is my name? My name is mom. I don't even know what my first name is because everything's mom, mom, mom. You know what I mean? You can feel like that, and it can feel like, oh my gosh, like, where am I in all of this, right? However, it is not a bad thing. You have just now transitioned into another elevated form of yourself and stage of life. And the tricky part of it is learning how to, right, still continually bring the fundamental things, right? Because the fundamental truths and principles are tried and true. So you can take them in each stage of life. How you implement it, where you implement it, might be different for all of us, but those fundamental truths are still the same. And so, for example, What I can do is give a little example of, like, I don't know if you guys have heard of that. There's different now people, but like Ryan's World, his family, his mother and father, building that channel for him. Maybe Gracie's Corner. Some people look at that. That's a family who built that, right? So an example of that is they have certain skill sets and talents and things like that, and they've used it to now create, right, this brand for their family, right? Well, let's say the mother and father, that was their skill set from the beginning. Oftentimes losing yourself unhealth in an unhealthy way would be, oh my gosh, when I become a mother, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to, exercise certain God-given gifts and talents, because now, it's almost like it feels like you have to forsake it for fatherhood or forsake it for motherhood. That's in an unhealthy way. That's not that's not what God intended. What God intended is for you to use your skills. And now that you are now responsible maybe for these children that you have, you integrate it. Your interdependent system now has expanded from not just you and your husband or you and your wife, but now to your children. So that's a good example of how they had to lose maybe just the fact of how it was with just them two to now, okay, now it's us three or us four, this family that we have, and how can we execute, and pour our gifts, not only demonstrate it from ourselves and who we are, but now how can we incorporate it with our children, right? That's a healthy, but there is a losing. There is a losing of the way it was, when it was just them two. But it does not have to be in a negative. It doesn't have to be a negative way or a negative connotation. I remember a while ago I wrote this is something like, it's not like necessarily a quote, but a statement on Facebook, because I had a lot of my friends who were mothers, and they were asking me, like, how the heck are you doing it? Because I had my daughter and I was still doing concerts. I was training and auditioning and all kind of things like that. And I just remember writing, like, my husband and my children don't take away from me. They fuel me even more to fulfill my purpose. They don't drain me, from doing that. If anything, they give me more inspiration and more motivation. I remember being pregnant with my oldest daughter, and I was completing college, graduated summa cum laude, by the way. Girl smart. I have to pat myself. My husband says I need to pat myself on the back more. So sorry, guys. Just following order. Because I told y'all, red flag is sometimes I do it without acknowledgement or knowing how much I'm doing. But when I was pregnant, I found out I was pregnant with her on my last semester of school. And so I graduated. I was 5 months pregnant with her when I graduated college. And I remember I had the choice of either going to UPenn, because I was a communication studies student, and my professors basically wanted me to go, were what do you call it, giving me recommendations to go to Annenberg School of Communication, UPenn's very distinguished program, right? And I got all the way up until, like, I had my interview, with the dean of the program and things like that. And I basically pretty much was in there. And I just remember when I went in there, I just felt like I don't belong here. Like, this is not it. This is not what I'm supposed to do and go. And I just remember just feeling my daughter, in my tummy and saying, I didn't want to be a hypocrite. Like, I want to go after and pursue what I think I'm purpose here to do, which was like the arts, singing and things like that. And I'm like, I didn't know she was a girl because I wanted to be surprised. So just baby. If I have this baby, I don't want to be a hypocrite, to this child and say, pursue your dreams, go after your dreams. And I didn't do it, And so I say all that to say, just to bring it back, that they fuel me, they inspire me to do wholeheartedly what God has placed me here to do. And I think that's what it is, right? That's what, when we're talking about losing your growth being a process of losing yourself and rediscovering yourself, that's a natural part of growth, and when you have your family that you're building, that's what it should do. That's what it should do. It should inspire you to want to wholeheartedly, display your gifts. And so again, that's an anchor. When you see the relationship causing you to lose yourself and then rediscover a more in-depth version or a greater elevated version of who you are, that's okay. Like, okay, yeah, there was a stripping of an old understanding or old sense of self, but only to birth, right, a greater version of it. So that's a necessary occurrence, and that's what a relationship should do. Because what would be the point? Like, what would be the point of me merging and uniting with Ben if he was not going to pour into me, or be able to allow me with his self-awareness, and with his humility, and submission to God, to be able to help me dig deeper into who I am and help me to fulfill that purpose here, So those are anchors. Those are things that we can anchor ourselves in when it comes to the relationship. And then it's not just me seeing like, oh yeah, he has a good personality, he has a good character. No, okay, I'm seeing that this friendship that we're building, the relationship that we're developing, man, it's letting me come closer to the light. But while I'm getting closer to the light, I am dealing with some things within myself. Like maybe I'm dealing with some things that are still, in the darkness. Even, but it's letting me come closer to the light. It's letting me be able to, see the things that I need to improve upon, see the things that is still blocking, me to have the most optimal experiences. So that, it is good. That is good. And especially when you see someone who is investing in the commitment of the development of your friendship when going through rough times, right? Difficult times. Because that's when you see the true colors come out. It's not necessarily when everything is like, life is all rainbows, and sun rays. But when the storms of life come, like how how tried and true, how is their commitment and their investment into this relationship, so all of those things like that, those are anchors, right? Healthy conflict resolution, reciprocity in the relationship, right? Not that we're calculating, I give you this, you give me that, we're not doing that tit for tat, but that this is a reciprocal relationship that you're in. You can see that both of the relationship for both of you is helping you work through some of the vices that you have, and again making you see yourself in the true light of who you are in a more in-depth way. So hopefully you guys got a nice little overview of what the differences are, okay, in regards to what red flags, what green flags are, and what anchors are in relationships. So again, I'll repeat the statement for tonight just so you can take it to sleep with you or marinate on it. Don't ignore the red flags. I think it's Izzy and Emily definitely highlighted that tonight when they said, they felt like their red flag is just always looking in the good of people. And, you don't want to do that. You don't want to blind yourself to the truth, because trust has to be anchored in truth. We're not just trusting our opinions or our fleeting emotions. It has to be grounded in fundamental truth to be able, right? That's why I always say God establishes trust, because the trust has to be anchored in the truth, not just a fleeting or blinded emotion, right? So, yeah, observe the character of the person with the right lens, and then Once you can do that, don't allow it for you to not make you ignore the red flags, and then don't mistake the green flags for anchors. It's not encouraged, the green flags, observe them, note that, okay, this would be, I can explore this relationship because of these green flags that I see, or this friendship because of these green flags that I see, because I know that, okay, my heart with this person, is safe in a way, right? But safety does not mean that the relationship is purposed to be, that person is purposed to be who you are to walk together with or live together with and experience life for a lifetime. You want to look and identify the anchors in the relationship where it's showing how you guys are working together and moving together. And the anchors, the life's challenges and tests of time and change will, test those anchors, right? And when they're still stabilized and when they're still, anchored into the ground, then yeah, that's the one that you can look to say, okay, yeah, this relationship is good for me. And I'm seeing the evidence. It's demonstrating that it has the wherewithal to, move through the test of time and change. All right. Well, I'm going to get off with you guys. Don't want to keep you guys. I'm already have kept you too late. All right. So I'm going to go. I see Emily and Ali Socks having a whole nice conversation. So I'm glad. I'm glad I came on just for that. I will hopefully see you guys next what am I saying? Next Sunday, this Sunday. God willing, I will see you guys this Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have come on at different times these last two times because I've started going on TikTok before I came on here, and I'm kind of like trying to test out the times, like what would be the best time to go on there first and then come on here. So thank you for being patient with me with that, trying to work it out. So I think after this week, I will definitely have a definite time to see what works well to try to integrate going on TikTok as well. All right. Good night, Emily. Thank you for staying with me, darling. You stayed for just about the whole time. And yes, good night, Ali Socks, even though I know. All right. So again, if you heard anything you like, definitely head on over to my Forever Friends Academy YouTube channel, subscribe, spread the content if you think it is useful. And yeah, I'll see you until next time. Oh, and as always, thank you for your time. All the people that popped in. Won't say all of your names, but I'm so grateful. You could be anywhere. You decide to come here. So thank you so much. And I am off until next time. Always remember to live to love freely. Bye.